This is a Fox News alert. You are looking live at Ferguson, Missouri, where a small group of protesters is already gathering. They, along with the rest of the nation, are awaiting the announcement of the grand jury's decision in the Michael Brown case. Prosecutors are expected to announce that decision in just about 2 hours, 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 Central. The grand jury decide whether or not to indict Officer Darren Wilson. He is the Ferguson, Missouri police officer who shot unarmed teenager Michael Brown to death last August. The shooting setting off weeks of violent clashes between rioters and police, and right now Ferguson bracing for more possible unrest. We have live team coverage from the courthouse to the police command center to the streets of Ferguson. Plus, all the legal and forensic experts are here. Brown family lawyer Benjamin Crump and Dr. Michael Baden, who incidentally performed an autopsy on the deceased Michael Brown. But we begin with Fox News correspondent Steve Harrigan live outside the courthouse in Clayton, Missouri. Steve.
Greta, tremendous sense of anticipation here outside the courthouse. Small groups coming out to see what's going on here and around the police station in Ferguson as well. This grand jury of 12, 9 whites and 3 blacks, has really worked in the shadows, as grand juries do, behind closed doors for the past 3 months. Now we know they've reached a decision, but we don't know what that decision is. That announcement is 2 hours away, and really a range of options before this grand jury. 9 out of 12 have to vote to indict. And the charge could be anything from involuntary second-degree manslaughter all the way up through charges of murder. Now, in anticipation of possible violence here, we have seen a number of stores deciding to shut down, close, board up, and really just in the past couple of hours, any stores that we've seen open have been shutting their doors. People here are concerned. People you talk to are afraid. That being said, the protests we've seen the past couple of nights have been small, just 50 to 70 people, a handful of arrests, but the police presence, the law enforcement presence is growing. Just behind me, we just saw some National Guard troops go into that courthouse. It's a very visible and strong police presence. And of course, the governor here is saying that violent unrest will not be tolerated. Greta, back to you.
Steve, thank you. And police in Missouri setting up a command center near the location of the violent protest last summer. Defense lawyer, former homicide detective Ted Williams joins us live from the command center in Ferguson. Ted, nice to see you. And is there any word tonight where Darren Wilson is?
Well, Greta, no, there's not a direct word where Darren Wilson is. But I can tell you, Greta, this has been a town since August under siege. You've got 22,000 citizens here, Greta. And when I go around this town, as I have in the last few days, there's one common thread. They're on pins and needles about what is about to take place in about another hour to 2 hours. And also, they want their town back. Their town, they believe, is not representative of the collision course that took place between Officer Darren Wilson and Michael Brown that led to Michael Brown losing his life.
Ted, does that mean that if there is trouble tonight, I don't know that there will be. I suspect, in fact, if there is an indictment, there's less likely to be any protests. But if there is trouble tonight, is there an outside element that has come into Ferguson? If you say people in Ferguson want their town back and want this to continue its ordinary course through the court system, are there outsiders there?
Yes, that's one of the difficult problems here when you talk to the citizens. There are a lot of citizens here who want to peacefully exercise their constitutional rights, their First Amendment rights to speak out. But the greatest concern here, there's a fringe element that is known about, that they are afraid is going to come in and create havoc for them, exercising their First Amendment rights, Greta. And also, I got to tell you, I've spoken to law enforcement officers tonight, and a great deal of them are concerned as to why this announcement is being made in the dead of night, because it gives the fringe element camouflage. And these officers are afraid for their own safety. And so there is this big question mark here, Greta. Why is this being done tonight in the dead of night, this announcement?
Well, you should finally say that I saw a tweet by Donald Trump. Donald Trump tweeted just a few minutes ago, why would they announce a fine into the grand jury in Ferguson at 9 o'clock in the evening, a prime time for riots? Not smart. That's Donald Trump tweeting. Now, I will tell you that Wes Lowry, the Washington Post, tweeted earlier that one of the reasons is put off at night because they wanted to get through rush hour traffic and kids home. So still lots of unknowns about this, Ted. Why tonight at this time? But We'll soon see it. Thank you, Ted.
My pleasure.
And we'll check back in later with Ted. And earlier today, the Brown family nervous, wondering what to expect and when to expect it, and then the call. The Brown family was notified of the grand jury's decision. We're going to hear all that decision tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, at 8 p.m. Central. And Brown family lawyer Benjamin Crump joins us. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Greta.
Benjamin, have you spoken to the family in the last couple hours? If so, how are they doing?
As you said, they're very nervous, Greta. They're on pins and needles, waiting on the decision, and an emotional roller coaster.
You know, this has been tough for everybody on both sides of this, and it was sort of interesting that Michael Brown Sr. Issued a public service announcement calling for calm. Yes,
ma'am, and they're trying to find positive things to deal with such a negative situation. And as Attorney Williams just said, the people in Ferguson are trying really hard to put on their best face, and hopefully we've learned from 3 months now dealing with this.
Now, Governor Nixon, governor of Missouri, says he doesn't know what the verdict is of the grand jury, what they've decided to indict or not to indict. Do you have any information? Does the family have any heads up or any information?
No, ma'am, Greta. We're going to be notified by the prosecutor, his office said, before they make the announcement publicly.
And did they tell you how much they're going to give you, like 5-minute notice, 2-minute notice, any information at all?
They did not. They only said that they will call before the district attorney tells the world.
What's it been like for the family dealing with the prosecutor's office since this started? What's the relationship?
It's not very much of a relationship, Greta. It's one that's a little difficult because they thought that they were going to get notice today of the decision, but they actually found out from the media that the decision was coming today. So there's a lot of mistrust on behalf of Michael Brown's parents and the prosecutor's office. But what they want is everybody to voice their opinions, but they also want people to be peaceful and do things constructively and not violently, forgive me.
How much pressure has been on the family? I mean, lots of times families, when they're under pressure like this, whether it's someone injured in Iraq or someone is arrested for something or has a serious illness, lots of pressure on families when they go through things. I mean, in the last couple of months, you know, on a personal level, how's it been for the family?
Well, as a parent, Greta, you could only imagine losing your child and losing them in this manner and then not really being able to grieve, but for the last 3 months, they've had to have this very public fight to try to see if the killer of their child would be held accountable. So it's been one of those stressful situations where emotions take their toll on them, and they are just not praying and saying, we hope that the killer of our child is held accountable, and no matter what, we're going to find a way to get something positive out of this.
Now, the use of the word killer suggests to me that, and I understand the grief and pain, you know, that they're going through. Of course, I haven't walked in their shoes, so I don't truly understand it. But does that mean that they have made up their mind that they are certain that this is, that he should be indicted, or are they going to wait to hear what the grand jury is? Can they accept that the grand jury heard the evidence and accept their determination, whatever that is, or not?
Well, Greta, you have children. And if someone told you your unarmed child was killed in broad daylight, it would be hard for you to try to reconcile your mind that a person will kill your unarmed child and not even have to face the court of law to have the evidence against them brought before a jury. And that's all they've asked for, is to have a court of law be able to be transparent, it all come out, so they can have a chance at what they believe justice is. They haven't got all the facts based on what happened in the grand jury, and apparently this secret proceeding may never be made public now. But what they do know is what witnesses have told them about what they witnessed with their child, what Dr. Biden has told them based on his autopsy, and they believe that their child was killed and the killer should be held accountable. They do not feel it was justified.
I don't know if you've been able to see any of the pictures of Missouri tonight. When we have live pictures as we await to see what the grand jury decides. Do you expect? I mean, when when you've talked to people on the street there, do you expect that there's going to be trouble or not?
You know, Greta, as you said, Michael Brown's father did the PSA. His mother and everybody on our legal team, we have continued to try to stress that people be peaceful. We understand the frustration, and nobody can be more frustrated than his mother and father. But if they can, you know, exercise their constitutional rights in a peaceful way, everybody else should. The Ferguson community is doing it, so all these people are coming from outside. We want them to follow the example of the Ferguson community and be nonviolent.
Okay, in the event, I have no idea what the grand jury is going to do tonight, but in the event that they return a no bill, meaning that there's no indictment, does the family intend to sue the police officer civilly, since that's a much lower burden of proof? That doesn't ask for incarceration, but asks for compensation, monetary compensation. Is that the expectation, to try to make themselves whole? Do they expect to do that?
Well, we'll explore all their legal avenues to get some sense of justice, but at the end of the day, they really want the killer to be held accountable, Greta.
And, of course, we'll be watching tonight when the jury does return. Mr. Crump, I very much appreciate you joining us tonight. I know that it's been quite a day, and your day certainly is not over by any means, sir.
Thank you so much.
And Griff Jenkins is also live in Ferguson. Griff, what is going on where you are?
Hi, Greta. We're at the Ferguson Police Department, and tensions are rising here. You can see across the street a couple of hundred protesters. Their signs say "Justice for Mike Brown, indict now." I talked to some of this crowd, and we're still just under 2 hours away from this decision coming out, and yet they're going to be out here regardless. You can see they're sort of about halfway into the street, and we've seen in recent days some of the protesters not quite this large. This is the largest, them coming out and blocking the street. If we look over here, you can see some of the press here and the police not having a huge show of force right now. They have barricades. This is a police department over here. Now, when you talk to these protesters over here, they tell you this is partially about the decision, but one thing they want you to know is that it's about respect. They feel the strong show of police is a sign of disrespect, and they want to push back against it, pushing back against authority. Interestingly, just minutes ago, I saw my first National Guard Humvee drive by. That's significant because for the first time, as the authorities have told me, the National Guard will be involved out policing on the streets should this get into a situation that needs to be controlled. That wasn't the case last time, and this crowd over here says that National Guard is only going to make things worse, that it's arrogant and a sign of disrespect. Now, as we see again, the police, we showed you, there's only a few officers here. We've seen more officers come out. Then we saw them go back in. They're not trying to be in an aggressive position. You see none of them have on riot gear, but clearly this crowd, guys, let's cross the street and get a little closer. This crowd is starting to get energized, and we have hours to go before the decision. They're waiting. How you doing? What's your name?
I can't tell you my name.
Are you going to be out here all night regardless of the decision? So as you can see, they're very upset, guys. Let's go this way. We're going to take you a little bit into this. There's a lot of excitement going on. We're going to be here. We hope that it doesn't get out of hand, but as authorities told us, the one thing they worry most about, one word, guns. Greta, back to you.
Griff, thank you, and we'll check back with you a little later as we await the grand jury's decision as our live coverage continues all night on Fox News. And right now, the evidence from the gun. We do not know everything the grand jury knows, but one key piece of evidence may be soot and powder stippling. Now, what is that? And why might that be an important clue? Stephen Howard joins us. He's an expert in ballistics. Nice to see you, Steve.
Nice to see you. Happy holidays.
Right. Happy holidays. Okay, Steve, tell me, what is stippling? Because, you know, one of the things that I think is important in analysis is how far away that gun barrel was from the decedent. Is there a way to tell that?
Yes, there is. Stippling is either unburned particles of gunpowder or particles that are still on fire that fly forward and strike the person's flesh and or clothing.
Is there, I assume that it goes a certain distance. It's not going to go, for instance, 300 feet. I mean, is it going to go likely with the type of weapon here? Is it likely to go 5 feet, 10 feet? I mean, 2 inches? How far would you expect to see that? Depending on the gun and the load, we usually see it in as little as 2 inches and as much as 8 inches. Further if magnums are involved, but that's not the case in this case. Is there any other way to determine, if you're not there as an eyewitness, you're not there measuring, is there any way to tell how far the barrel of that gun is from the decedent? Yes, there is. Gunshot residue. Now, gunshot residue actually originates from the primer, but if it's on Mr. Brown, it really doesn't mean much. But if it's not on Mr. Brown, that means that the officer and Mr. Brown were several feet apart, if not several yards apart. All right. But that would not be in the autopsy report. That would be in the lab reports. Okay, and that would be after you do an analysis of the clothing that the decedent was wearing at the time of the shooting. Is that right? That's right. Okay, so and it can be as far away as what? Because that, you know, when a police officer is talking about reasonable fear, reasonable expectation of fear, or self-defense, obviously the distance between the decedent and the end of the barrel becomes important. So how far out would you expect to find gunpowder or not? I mean, where's the cutoff? That's hard to tell, and there's no clear cutoff. If the wind's blowing in my face, it could be a foot, a little more. If it's blowing towards my target, it could be 50 feet. But if there's none at all on him, then they were obviously several feet apart. All right, and would the diameter of a spray, I mean, let's say that there is, I don't know that there is or not, but let's say that the grand jury saw clothing with gunpowder residue per the lab. Would the diameter of the gunpowder residue on the clothing have any indication in terms of distance? Yes. If you're talking the gunshot stippling, the wider the pattern, the further they are apart. The closer the particles are together, the closer the muzzle was to Mr. Brown. And of course, this is just one small piece of evidence that we would expect that the grand jury might have seen, right? I mean, it's in a typical investigation where they're thorough, they may put that kind of information to sort of help corroborate other testimony, right? Yes. One thing I find very interesting is the angles of the bullets, which angle they struck him and went into his body. I find those very irregular. And what does that mean to you? It means either somebody's got it wrong or somebody's not telling the truth. In terms of what? In terms of what happened on the day in question. What does it indicate to you? Does it indicate, I mean, which direction does this fall? I'm not understanding you. Okay. The bullets entered in a downward position. Now, if the men are struggling for the gun, one's not going to be standing over the other. So I'd have to see the autopsy photographs and do a full shooting reconstruction before I could tell you for certain, but I find these irregular. All right, well, Dr. Bodden, who did the second autopsy on the decedent, will join us, so maybe we get a little more information on that. Steve, thank you.
You're most welcome.
Our breaking news coverage continues live from Ferguson. Up next, you're going to hear from our legal panel. Plus, Dr. Michael Bodden, as promised, he's here now. He performed an autopsy on Michael Brown. He also testified before the grand jury. Dr. Bodden goes on the record coming up.
Shut it down! St. George! Shut it down! St. Anne! Shut it down! Florissant! Shut it down!